The moment the stage lights went up in Milan, the usually cold and formal atmosphere suddenly transformed into something indescribable, as if a new energy had rippled through the elite guests seated in neat rows. No one was quite prepared for what was about to happen next. Even the senior fashion editors who had attended dozens of seasons seemed to hold their breath. Then, two figures emerged from behind the curtains with a calm but confident stride: Kai and Tan Songyun. In a matter of seconds, the fashion world seemed to stop. All eyes were on them, not just because of the surprise of their appearance, but because of the aura they exuded. This wasn't just another celebrity appearance. There was something different, more personal, more alive, and somehow more human. The initially skeptical guests began to lean forward, trying to capture every detail, every expression, every word that escaped their lips. Kai began in a low but steady voice, greeting those present in fluent Italian, followed by Tan Songyun, who continued with warmth in English. The combination instantly created an unexpected emotional bridge. It wasn't just the language, but the way they brought those words to life, as if they weren't reading a script, but telling something they truly felt. It didn't take long for the space to transform from a mere runway into a fashion show. They weren't just introducing the collection, but also weaving a narrative about journey, identity, and the courage to push boundaries. This wasn't a typical opening. This was an experience. Several journalists exchanged glances, trying to confirm that what they were seeing was real. There were no major announcements beforehand, no significant leaks. The arrival of Kai and Tan Songyun felt like a hastily orchestrated surprise, or perhaps something even the industry hadn't fully planned for. What made the moment even more surprising was their backgrounds. Both were widely known as actors with large fan bases, but not as professional presenters, let alone on a world-class fashion stage. But that was precisely the magic. They carried not the burden of formal expectations, but rather a fresh, bold energy. As they walked down the runway, not as models, but as mood setters, the rhythm of the show changed. The music was lively, and the model steps seemed to follow the emotional flow they were building. Even the designers sitting in the front row were smiling, a rare reaction at such a formal event. Tan Songyun, with a soft yet assertive expression, delivered a message about how fashion isn't just about clothes, but about the stories we choose to wear every day. Her words were simple, but delivered with a sincerity that endeared her to many. Kai then added another dimension, speaking about the courage to be different in a world that often demands uniformity. He didn't sound like someone reading a text. He sounded like someone speaking from personal experience. The moment felt like a meeting of two worlds, Asia's entertainment industry and Europe's fashion capital, that had previously run parallel, now meeting at a common point. And the encounter wasn't awkward, but harmonious. Cameras began to capture the audience's demonstrations. Some smiled, some looked moved, and some even seemed surprised by how the show had unfolded. This wasn't just an opening. This was a redefinition. Behind the scenes, rumors began to spread rapidly. Many wondered how all this could have happened. Was this a new strategy from the organizers? Or the result of a shift in direction as the industry began to open up to broader global influences? But on stage, Kai and Tan Songyun showed no signs of nervousness. They moved in near-perfect synchronization, as if they had been doing it for years. Every transition felt natural. Every pause felt precise. When the first segment ended, the applause was not just polite, but genuinely heartfelt. Some guests even stood, a rarity at the start of an event. It was a tacit acknowledgement that something special had just happened. And as the show progressed, the impact of the opening was still palpable. The energy they had built didn't dissipate, but instead laid the foundation for the entire show. The models walked with more confidence, the music became bolder, and the overall atmosphere became more vibrant. On social media, the reaction began to explode. Clips of the opening spread quickly, accompanied by comments filled with admiration and bewilderment. Many called it a moment that changed the way they viewed fashion shows. Some critics even began writing reviews in real time, calling it one of the most memorable openings in the show's history. The word unexpected appeared repeatedly, but always followed by brilliant. But perhaps what was most interesting wasn't the surprise itself, but how it was received. There was no pushback, no major controversy. Quite the opposite. There was a warm reception, as if the fashion world had been waiting for something like this. As the lights slowly dimmed at the end of the segment, Kai and Tan Songyun stood side by side, exchanging a brief glance before bowing to the audience. It wasn't just a formal gesture. It was the conclusion of a moment that would be remembered for a long time. And as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a shocking performance. It was a sign that old boundaries were crumbling, and something new, bolder, and more inclusive was taking its place. But the story wasn't truly over when they left the stage for the first time that night. In fact, as the lights dimmed slightly, conversations among the guests began to intensify. The names Kai and Tan Songyun were mentioned repeatedly, not with a hint of surprise anymore, but with a deeper sense of curiosity. Who exactly was behind this bold decision? Several key industry figures were seen immediately contacting their teams, as if realizing that something major was shifting. This wasn't just about two actors walking the runway, but about how the definition of host had shifted to something much broader and more flexible. In the corner, a senior editor known for her critical eye was even seen taking thoughtful notes, something she rarely did during a show. She was observing not only the collection, but also how the emotional interaction established early on by Kai and Tan Songyun continued to influence the overall dynamics of the event. Interestingly, the models who walked after the opening segment seemed to carry a different energy. They not only walked with technical precision, but also with a more lively expression, as if they were part of the narrative that had begun earlier. This is an effect rarely seen in conventional fashion shows. Backstage, the production crew reportedly fell silent for a moment after the opening segment concluded. Not because of any mistakes, but because they themselves hadn't expected the end result to be so powerful. What might have initially seemed like an experiment had now become an iconic moment. Tan Songyun, in a brief moment backstage, was seen taking a deep breath before breaking into a small smile. Her expression wasn't one of relief, but also of pride that was hard to conceal. She knew they had just done something unusual, and it had worked. Meanwhile, Kai was seen conversing briefly with several members of the production team, his gestures calm but confident. There was no overt euphoria, just the realization that they had opened a new door that would likely be followed by many more. Outside the building, the crowd of fans and media began to gather denser than usual. News of their appearance spread at an almost uncontrollable rate. Many came not just to see the collections, but to experience the atmosphere of a moment that was making the world's rounds. And when the evening finally came to a close, one thing remained in the minds of everyone in attendance, that they had witnessed something more than just a fashion show. They had witnessed a shift, a new beginning that might change the face of the industry forever.